Welcome everyone to SEO Office Hours. My name is Michael Chidzey. I'm an SEO here at Good Signals, and part of what we do along with special guests are these office hour sessions where people can jump in and ask their questions around their website and web search. By the way, nobody here is in the hot seat and we might not know all the answers, but multiple heads thinking about a problem should help. We've had a bunch of questions submitted already, as you can see, which we'll go through. But if there's anybody here live on the call who would like to ask any questions, please feel free to flag yourself in the chat functionality, which will be monitored. Also, there's usually lots of other amazing SEOs live on the call that share their ideas, experiences, and perspectives. I personally think that's one of the best things about SEO Office Hours is not just hearing from the four of us, but from everybody else. So please continue to do that. And you may have noticed that Joe is not with us today, and instead stepping in again is Simon Cox. Welcome, Simon. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Please let us know where you're calling in from the chat. We have 140 people, 150 people joining us today. Nobody on YouTube can see the numbers, we can, so we know exactly how many it is. And I'd just like to bump things up a little bit. Thank you for a few people in the chat as normal. Jordan, it's lovely to see him. Steve, hi. Jack, hi. Preeti, hi. Sarah, hi. And John. Cheese, John, today. Excellent. Thank you all for coming today. This is episode number 81, which is fabulous. Mike.
Yes.
Do you
Hello.
want to... Oh, you still there? Good.
Yes, I'm still sorry. Did I disappear?
Hello, that's all right. I hope you're enjoying the show. Please click a like on the video and subscribe in the YouTube channel when you go and visit that later on to see yourself when they've eventually caught up. And have your friends and colleagues sign up to join us on goodsignals.com SEO Office Hour, SEO-Office-Hours. So it's every Friday at 9:30 a.m. Right, I'm going to introduce the guests today. Excitingly, we've got, let me get this right, as I did earlier, Bengü Sarıca Dinçer from Turkey, who is an SEO manager at DesignModo, where she develops innovative strategies to improve website performance, boost organic rankings, and maximize conversion rates. She has experience working both in-house and agency side, giving her a well-rounded perspective on SEO challenges and opportunities. Bengü will be talking at Search and Stuff, as we mentioned a couple of weeks ago. And with us today, we have Geoff Meakin. Geoff is also known as the healthcare SEO. He helps private healthcare clinics in the UK fill their booking calendars through search engine optimization. An SEO consultant since 2014, Geoff previously worked in operating theatres in both the NHS and private sector, giving him a unique blend of healthcare expertise and digital marketing know-how. And I hope a few interesting stories. We shall see. Mike, over to you.
Great. I'm just sorry, I seem a bit disorganized this morning. I was just emailing people to let them know this is happening. So that's why, Simon, when you called me, I was completely deer in the headlights there. But great. Welcome, everybody. And thank you, everybody who's joined us live. And thank you to those watching afterwards on YouTube. So I'm just going through the questions, and I think we'll start with. So there was somebody that asked a question who is new to SEO, who would basically like to know if there are any free keyword tools, keyword research tools. Who would like to kick off?
You
Bengü,
can go for,
go for it.
Yeah, that's a great question because people are very curious. New tools, those fancy tools, but I think Google made the best one for them, and it is completely free. It is Google Keyword Planner. PPC are online ads. People use it generally, but it is very useful for SEOs too. And as I already said, it's free. And also there are some other freemium tools like people also ask. It is really my favorite tool. And it provides 3 free for a day. And also there is people also ask. Or no, I already told that. I forgot the third one. We'll turn back.
Yeah, that's fine.
When I remember it.
If I know that you do some pre-training and things with SEO in your courses, do you mention any particular tools that people can use for keyword research?
I think the best ones to get started, especially for complete beginners, is really Search Console and Google Trends. Obviously, they're both free. Search Console gives you insights into the people that are coming to your site currently and what queries they've used, so that's good. And Google Trends, you can see comparative data, but since I think it's about 2014 or so, so that's a really useful one as well. And then in terms of paid accounts, I think it's good to start off with a tool that can grow with you. Something like Ahrefs, if you can cough up the money for that from the start. Or I think SEMrush has a free account. SEO Power Suite and Uber Suggest as well are also good. I think Uber Suggest is quite good for newbies. I think that's quite intuitive. So yeah, those would be my recommendations.
Perfect. Simon, do you have anything to add?
Just I'm going to add another thumbs up for GSC, and I will Google Search Console, and I will add into that maybe one of the first things you want to do in there, if you're looking for keywords, is look for things that are averaging on the second page, so 11 to 20. Focus on those first because that's free and easy to find out, and they're the ones you're already partially ranking for, and you can put some effort into those ones and get them boosted up to page one with hopefully more traffic, but not always these days. But we won't go there yet.
Great, amazing. Yeah, I agree with everybody. I think in terms of free, I'd probably start with the Google Keyword Planner that you get when you sign up for a paid account. But Jeff, I really liked your point about if you are going to invest in a tool, make sure you continue to use it and you grow with it. Sometimes you can pay for things and end up sort of 6 months later thinking, oh no, I've spent however much on this. Just make sure you use it. A lot of them offer free trials anyway, so that will help with that. Great. Simon, is there anything in the chat or should we jump on to the next question?
No, just one. Steve's mentioned, of course, Citrix does have a free tool as well. And we should mention Citrix because it is brilliant. It's got really good data.
Yeah, and Steve always publishes really good reports as well on their blog just about what's going on and trends and stuff like that. So I would definitely check out Systrix. Okay, next question. I've calmed down now, by the way. I think without Jo sometimes I get a little bit, I realise what she does and I'm doing bits of the organisation, which is obviously why she's so into events. Okay, next question. Recently, we've seen a wave of new acronyms: GEO, AEO, LLMO, and even DISCO. That's discovery optimization. Apparently, I've not heard that one before. Some say they're useful to signal change and reframe client conversations. Others argue it's just shiny new jargon and the SEO fundamentals haven't changed. As practitioners, do you think adopting these new terms actually helps us build better strategies and communicate with stakeholders, or does it risk distracting from the core work of search and discovery optimization? How do you explain the evolution to clients without getting lost in these acronyms? Has anybody else? I've not used Disco. Has anybody else used it? I like it, but I don't think I'll be using it. Jeff, how would you feel? Are you okay to start on this one?
Yeah, sure thing. I think it's an interesting question. Of course, it stirs up a lot of debate and a lot of strong feeling, I think, in the SEO industry. I think it's important to mention that actually a lot of these new tools, AIO, Geo, all of this sort of stuff, I think its uptake varies depending on industry. So I work entirely in healthcare. So for me, a lot of my clients are really just catching up to SEO. They're just getting their heads around SEO now and realizing that it's a really useful, important tool. Whereas I think for another industry, perhaps if you're in SaaS or something like that, these things are a lot more prominent. And I think, to be honest, we get into a bit of an echo chamber of thinking everybody's getting into these new tools and they're all using these different acronyms, when I think for the broad majority of people, that's just not the case. So I think it really depends. It depends. I need to put a pound in the swear jar for saying it depends. But I think for most people, it's a case of sticking with SEO and working out your own kind of industry and what the driving forces are behind that industry. Personally, I like the term just search optimization, just because that future-proofs us then for whatever comes after AI. So that would be my 2 cents on it.
Great. Bengü, are you using any of these terms? Is it just SEO for you?
I don't use them. I prefer to call it as SEO because I believe that AI search is an evolution of SEO and we are just doing the same things for now. And if you want to be quoted or cited those tools, LLM tools, you still need to do SEO. So yeah, people tend to change it lately, but I think the fundamentals remaining same, so no need to change it. But if I see someone call it as Geo or even Disco, I'm totally good at it because I respect all of those opinions out there. And I think we should adapt to others' opinions. So also the interface that has been changed that people use for their queries. So we should adapt to opinions and also the new interfaces as SEOs, because SEO is a dynamic environment by definition, I believe.
Great. Simon, do you have anything to add?
Yeah.
Responses, by the way.
To me, it's a distraction. There's a lot of nuance in these terms, but they're all basically SEO plus a bit of focus on something, some aspect of it. And hence, I think it's a distraction. Things will pan out over time, and you say, I should have been doing that. And yeah, we should need to look at all this stuff because it all matters. But it's not the core of what we do. It should be a little bit of time. And as far as explaining it to your marketing team, when they come and say, oh, geo, etc., just remind them about NFTs and what they did for that.
Great. Thanks, Simon. So Bengü, I'm similar to you in a way that if, for instance, if I'm having a conversation with, say, a client and they're referring to these terms, then I don't tend to try and push them down the SEO path and spend ages talking about that, because Simon was saying it's a bit of a distraction. So I think, as I said, I've not used disco. I'm loving some of the in the chat.
Yeah, the creative one.
But if somebody else uses that when I'm in conversation with them, that's totally fine. I get what they're referring to. But yeah, internally, from my perspective, a lot of the things that we're doing from an SEO perspective don't change. So I would tend to refer to it as a SEO. Great. Simon, is there anything in the chat?
A couple of bits. Most of the talk in the chat is about disco, of course. And let me just add, if you're watching this on the YouTube later, get in live. The chat is brilliant. It's always good fun. There's a lot more in there than we always refer to it. Anyway, Jack has said SEO is dynamic. A dynamic environment is a brilliant way to look at it. So he's agreeing there. I feel like so many people want to stick with a single catch-all definition, and it should definitely be adaptable and flexible, which SEO is, I guess. And then Jordan said the only constant in SEO is change. And that's been true for so many years. Mike.
Great. Super. Okay, next question. We are flying through. We're on our third question already. I honestly think it's Joe that holds us back. I say this each time she's away. Should have got an event in there somewhere. Definitely would have got an event. Okay, one of my directors keeps asking ChatGPT and other LLMs what we should be doing for SEO. The advice changes each time, and it's usually either very basic things or things we're already doing. How do you handle those who lean heavily on AI for guidance? And how do you explain the strategy is already being covered without sounding like you're dismissing their input? Have you guys had this? Have you had any? I imagine that's quite frustrating. You're in a meeting and somebody saying, but ChatGPT told me instead of doing it like this, you just do it like that. Jeff, are you okay to start on this one?
Yeah, sure. So I think, I have had this situation before, often being sent information from SEO gurus that is quite generic or it's not actually applicable in that situation. And of course, you thank the client, say, that was very helpful that you sent that across. But I think the best thing in this situation is to be quite proactive and actually telling clients, this is what we're going to be doing. So then when they send it over to you and they say, what about this item of SEO? You can say, yeah, we've done that, or we're doing that. If you remember the first kickoff call that we had, or the strategy that we put in place, that's actually been covered already, but thanks for sending across the information. And I think the other thing is just making sure that clients are busy that they don't have the time to probe you with these questions. If you can get clients to just be constantly picking up the phones instead of asking you questions, then that's a really good way to prevent them from sending these sort of things across.
Amazing. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would validate their curiosity at first, and I would say, yeah, that's really nice for you to research about SEO process out there. And then I would add, yeah, that's nice, but the most of what ChatGPT or other tools suggest are building blocks that we are already building and doing for like many years or for a while. And I should say this too, because otherwise the next step would be kicking off me. That's why I should validate their curiosity, but then I should add my unique control on their curiosity, because we are providing the process, not those tools. So we should have that control, but we should also acknowledge their input without sounding dismissive. That's the case, I believe.
Great, amazing advice. Simon, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, quite a lot. But Bengü's covered a lot of it, but nothing's really new, is it? So previously, before ChatGPT, years ago, your directors would be down the golf club playing golf with other directors. And they come back basically all these fab new ideas that they've had out of the golf course or in their club. And nothing's new. So really, what you should be doing is planning it all out and explaining why you're doing that planning. And then when the C-suite comes back and says, "Oh, we need to do this," you go, "But yes, if we do that, then we're not going to be able to do this plan, and that will fall to pieces, and I'll miss my objectives." So no, we're not doing that. You have to stand up to those C-suites. I know it's difficult, but if you're producing the stuff, then you've got to stand up for what you say. Apart from that, Bengü's absolutely bang on that, and Geoff, of course.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I don't have much to add, to be honest. I think, like everyone said, it's good that they're curious, and I always welcome input, whether it comes from a human, a blog post, or even LLM. But I think hopefully you've put a plan together based on data or experience, and I'd be careful not to change your plan based on something that's come from ChatGPT unless it's a good idea. And obviously, maybe there are some good ones there, but I wouldn't let it plan my whole SEO strategy. But I think, like Bengü was saying, it's actually really good that they're willing to change strategy and they're curious and so on. So I'd find a way of encouraging that. But yeah, if you're getting sort of Slack messages or emails every 5 minutes with a different ChatGPT recommendation, that would do my head in. So I'm with you. Simon, do we have anything in the chat?
Yes, Sarah has rightly said, "Can we ban the word guru?" And she's spot on. And I'm expecting a whole campaign about that. We should do. It's something to do with Indian mystics, isn't it? Mark said, "I thought as long as you tell ChatGPT to think like an SEO with 50 years experience, it worked." And Mark's absolutely right. It does. Jack said, "I like the way the question is worded with the without sounded like you're dismissing their input," which Bengü mentioned as well. Absolutely. And let's just whiz through the bits I haven't read yet and see if there's anything that I shouldn't read out. No, I'll come back to them. Mike.
Yeah, I have been in a similar situation before where I've had a client where they've been asking LLMs how to do better in LLMs, but not SEO. And yeah, the advice is very generic, I would say, and what we're doing already. Okay, next question. Oh, we have so many, and so they're so different. Should we stay on topic or should we leave? Let's do this one. With so many WordPress SEO plugins out there, Yoast, Rank Math, all-in-one SEO, SEO Press, etc., which ones actually make a difference for rankings? And what are you all using if you use WordPress, and why? Does anybody here use WordPress, and can you recommend a plugin for this person? Bengü, go for it.
Personally, I use Yoast, but it was there before me, so I didn't choose it. But still, I believe that none of those plugins or any of tools can directly impact rankings or anything else. They are just there for implementation, for SEO practices. So basically, you should go for your budget and also your needs. So if you find those plugins for their ease of use or their affordableness, so you can choose it, but not for boosting rankings because it's not related to that.
Great. Geoff, do you have anything to add? Do you use WordPress?
Yes, yeah, I use WordPress quite a bit. And yeah, just to back up everything that Bengü just said, I think she's absolutely right. The idea of using a plugin as like a silver bullet for rankings, I don't think it really works that way. I think a lot of them are quite similar in what they do. So yeah, I don't think it matters too much which one you use, to be quite honest.
Yeah. Simon, are you familiar with WordPress?
I am familiar with WordPress and I don't personally use it because I'm a technical SEO and I like to build websites. This is for Mark. I am a HTML programmer. It's a joke from a while back. So as Bengü said, none of these tools make you rank better just by installing them. You need to actually go through and put that content in the tools in the first place. I would go and get whatever you can afford and go through it, understand why they're doing it. As somebody that uses 11t to build my sites, if you don't know what that is, look up 11t.dev. I have to go and construct everything that I need to do with what the thing that they do. Things like schema, etc. I had to build a whole bit to do the schema, and in that way, I get to understand what's going on a lot better than just installing a plugin. And I think that's important. If you do technical SEO, build your own websites to understand how these plugins are doing what they're doing.
Great. I can see Steve putting his thumbs up to that, to building your own website if you're a technical SEO. Great. Yeah, in agreement with everybody. I think most of the popular SEO plugins on WordPress, if you go to their sort of plugins marketplace, particularly those that have decent reviews and ratings, they do very similar things. Some have paid options where they might be able to handle things like redirects, for example, and stuff like that. But I would say they very much do the same thing. If you're going to use a plugin, just make sure you use it. But I guess most of them just help with things like being able to add title tags and stuff like that. It's not anything that, like Geoff said, they're not going to help you necessarily rank better. They just help structure certain data and stuff like that. Simon, do we have anything in the chat?
A few bits and pieces. I'll just whiz through. Steve has said 0 plugins for the win. I'm assuming that those the 3 letters are. Lead uses Rank Math. Pretty uses Rank Math for her WP sites, which is very good. Sarah said, well said, Bengü. Plugins are there as a guide to give you recommendations based on best practices, and it doesn't beat an experienced person that works in SEO. Very true. Just with down, Mark has mentioned that I'm getting Meta. Yeah, of course. Monty is late, so no, Monty doesn't use plugins. Parmigan, in my opinion, only use what functionality you need. Don't add plugins in the hope that they add a vibe. The fewer plugins you have installed, in my opinion, the better. And that's very true. You really don't know what's going on with those plugins sometimes, as we know from every single hacked WordPress site. Sarah said, there are times where I have ignored Yoast, which is absolutely true. And anything else? Mark said, last time I used Yoast, it does a little bit of pruning to WordPress that can be helpful. I believe it redirects all the attachment URLs that WordPress creates for each upload, etc. So there are some benefits. That's why if you like me, I do run a WordPress site on my local machine, just have a look and see what it's doing. So it helps me out when I'm working on clients' WordPress sites, which I hate doing. Jack said, I once worked on a client's WordPress site with 64 active plugins, many of which clashed with each other. This is a problem. This is a problem as tech SEOs have a lot. Mike, do you use WordPress?
I do. Yeah, I use it for some of my clients have WordPress sites. I have some WordPress sites. One thing I tend to do when I first work on a WordPress site is create a staging version of it and see which of their plugins I can get rid of, which won't impact the site, because I think when you do use WordPress, it's quite easy to set something up and forget and not update, or just it's there because we used to use this functionality sort of 5 years ago. In terms of SEO plugins, I can't even think which one we've got on the Good Signals site. I think it's like SEO Framework or something like that. But like I said, a lot of them do the same thing. I would just as happily use Yoast or whichever others are using. I think like Geoff was saying, what's important is all the other stuff, creating really good content, having a nice design, a website that works, all of that stuff. And yeah, but I am very familiar with, to be honest, in my role, I tend to work across lots of different CMS. So there's anything from Shopify, Craft, custom builds, and anything really. So I just have to learn very quickly if it's something new, particularly anything custom. Okay, I see that Joe Juliana Turnbull's joined us as well in the audience. Very good. Hi, Joe. Okay, so next question. We're debating about whether to consolidate a dozen franchise websites into one corporate domain. At the moment, it's messy, a mix of platforms, inconsistent branding, and some franchise sites aren't being maintained at all. Consolidation would fix all of that. The concern, though, is what happens if those local landing pages don't perform as well as the content, as it ends up being too similar. The risk is that franchisees lose leads, and that's the thing they're most worried about. From an SEO and brand control perspective, how do you balance the operational benefits of consolidation with the risk of upsetting franchisees who fear they'll lose visibility and direct inquiries? Quite a mouthful. It's also in the chat. Geoff, obviously you work in healthcare, and I'm imagining you work with lots of franchises and stuff in different areas. Is this something you've come across before?
Not really, to be quite honest. No, I have seen a similar sort of situation, but this is a little bit outside of my experience. But to be honest, reading through it, the way that I would approach it would be to do a small sample set first. Maybe some of those franchisees that are underperforming, put those under a single brand or change that before expanding out to the whole thing. I think trying to do things in small stages like that is probably the best approach in this particular situation. But no, I can't claim that I'm super knowledgeable about this,
Oh,
unfortunately.
yeah, that's fine. I just wondered if maybe there were different clinics or something that were linked. And Bengü, what about you? Have you got any thoughts on this? Should they consolidate? Should they leave as is? What are your thoughts?
I'm in the right position, I think, because I have zero knowledge about the topic, but I have some thoughts like, yeah, consolidation for those separate websites sounds good for branding. But in that case, franchises are to think like that. And yeah, you should ensure that they don't lose their visibility and leads because that's the main point for them. But also, I think that the answer is hidden in the question because they say there are lots of similar content for different websites for landing pages. Sorry. So even in separate websites, the content should be unique, in my opinion. And for the one website with lots of franchisee landing pages, then you better differentiate those landing pages, like by adding addresses, maybe offers, different offers, user reviews, photos, or I don't know, videos, helpful things, and then differentiate them among others. And also, the better practice for consolidation would be redirecting old URLs permanently to the new ones, because in that case, a user will search for the old inquiries and they will redirect to the new. People will know upset and also franchises.
Great, amazing. Simon, do you have any thoughts on this one?
I do quite a lot. There's some interesting stuff. This is a really complex question. And first of all, if I say if you're going to bring an SEO agency in, make sure that you get somebody who's done exactly this with somebody else and can prove it and show it, because this could kill businesses. And a part of that business, you say franchises are people's own businesses. They basically buy that brand and run it. So it's a lot of soft skills going to be needed to persuade them that they need to do that, because they might get very upset about it because it is their business as well as yours. The big financial company I worked for many years, it was run as a federation because of local banking laws, and we did do exactly this. We brought the whole thing together. There were a lot of upset people around the world, but think of it like your brand guidelines, and maybe look at it in that direction and say, this is the things that have got to be on there. Now, that's already there in most franchises with brand and the rest of it. But so what you could do is do a stepped approach where you build out a service for building websites for those franchisees if they want it. And then you can do your subdirectories and everything and localize, as Bengü said, localize those pages to where they are and make sure you're doing lots of local SEO on them to keep that stuff. And then bring those stalls into the franchise bits into the main site as and when they want to. You'll charge them for running that, so you can do it. I've been working on a set of UK account, or actually global accountancy sites over the last few years, doing exactly this, where they bought up small companies and they wrap them in, and they have different tiers of websites they build for them, but they can run their own websites as well. But if people are running their own websites, maybe you have to come down on them hard if they're copying the content that's in your main site, because then you've got the issue of overlap, duplicate content. But as Bengü said, make it local. Mike.
Great, amazing advice. This is an interesting one. I think I'd probably, if I was you, if you are going to consolidate, I would take the best performing websites and build a brief based on those and how you essentially protect the traffic and how all of those websites basically will benefit from what the best have been doing. And one thing is, something in the question was around some of the franchisees aren't doing stuff on their website, whereas some of them are. And so when I'd be building this out, I'd be thinking, okay, so if somebody does want to do something, how do we make sure that it looks great and it's obvious and it features on the website? But if somebody decides not to do something, it also looks great. And I think I was thinking about author pages, sometimes looking at companies and you see who works there. Sometimes you click on it and it's just enough to see the person, but also if they've written content and all of that stuff, you get more information and it doesn't look odd if one member on the team is very active and somebody's not. So I'd just be thinking about how they all look great. Personally, I prefer to make one really good site than having lots of them, and particularly if they're on different platforms and so on. Development wise, design wise, all of that stuff, copywriting wise, you'll save a lot of time and money if it's one really good website. But like Simon said, it's their business, and you want to make sure if you do create one website, they've got the freedom to make changes to their site and add the type of content they want. And I think that brief at the beginning is very important to make sure you look at them and make sure that it's as good and hopefully better than what they've got at the moment. In terms of, but alternatively, you could look at trying to help those who have let their website go, and you could just focus on is improving those. I guess it depends on what you're actually selling. Do you have bookings? Do you manage bookings online or anything like that? Or are they just brochure websites? Because if they're just brochure websites, it's quite an easy thing. It's quite an easy fix. Just help the few that aren't quite. It's only a dozen, so that's not huge. It's not, obviously it depends on the size of the individual websites, but it's not a ridiculous size. You're not looking at sort of 200-300 businesses. Yeah, sorry, I'm thinking out loud with this one, but it is a business decision really. It's what you can then offer these individual businesses once you've done it. What does it look like afterwards? What support will they get? And also you don't want it where it takes a day or two before they can get any content up and make any changes because it's got to go through a central team. I think I would just weigh it up. I put a brief together, like I said, work out what good looks like, and put some alternative ideas together where, like Simon was saying about, could you provide some training or some support or a service to basically improve those other ones. Simon, do we have anything in the chat?
A few bits. Mark has said, Monty has said this is also a marketing business decision, as I mentioned. Mark has said that you could keep the sites separate but centrally manage them for the best of both worlds, re-platform them all. WordPress multi-site question, a craft might be better. They can negate a lot of the risks of pulling things into one domain, but keep the benefits control. And then once you said, work out the management aspects first. In many cases, those sites are run by different teams with different objectives and know-how. In these cases, a central team that oversees the whole thing works best. Decide whether it's a good idea to keep them separate or not, which I think is what they're trying to do. And Steve has said that the biggest domain consolidation he's seen in recent times is Radisson Hotels, with 7 major brands and 30 different domains, which must be mind-blowing trying to work all that lot out. Danone did a huge consolidation project a few years ago too. Business needs often trump SEO perfection, which is something we all have to realise and understand, that the business has to be the business. The SEO part is just polish. Yeah, that's the last bit I said, not Steve.
I guess one thing I would definitely add in is just how once you've done it all, obviously you want to be able to measure that success and so on, but you also want to make sure that you put guardrails in place where, for instance, redirects that you've set up, obviously they'll be on those old domains and so on, just making sure all of that stuff, all of a sudden you don't accidentally get one of the old websites popping up or something like that. And to be honest, this idea that everything's going to be easier if you put it all into one might also not be the case, because you're still probably going to have multiple things happening. And really think about those redirects as well. Make sure you redirect them to the actual business and not just redirect everything to the homepage, because that could be a bit messy. Great. I think it was Bengü that said maybe you could do it bit by bit. So maybe you could move over a few. Did you say that? Somebody said it. And that could be an option, that you put a few, you do it with a few of maybe the ones that aren't that successful at the moment, and move those over. Because I guess if you just do a few, you can always switch it back if you need to.
Sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say, I think another thing to consider is Google business profiles as well. And because obviously that's a huge ranking factor in local search. So whether you look at helping your franchisees out with their Google business profiles, possibly as a first step, because there's a lot that you can do there and get some quick wins. So I think that's something that's worth considering as well.
Yeah, 100%. Really good input. Okay, are we ready for the next question, or is there anything else in the chat?
No.
Cool. Okay,
Nothing else.
great. Next question is, we're told to strip out fluff and get to the point, but storytelling has always been a big part of building brand voice and authority. How do you see the role of storytelling evolving in SEO content now that LLMs and snippets prefer concise, self-contained answers? Bengü, what are your thoughts on this one?
I think it is better to keep both because personally, I won't change my practices for any type of tools because people need that storytelling thing. And also, you should keep conscious statements, answers. The best thing for me, keeping that conscious answers and then deepen them to stories. That's thing that might help to be cited and quoted and be included in AI search, and also to help to people to understand the topic around.
Great. Geoff, is there much storytelling in healthcare SEO?
There is, yeah, there's a lot of healthcare writers who really push the aspects of storytelling and using compassionate language. And really, they put a lot actually into writing health pieces that really resonate with people. So I can really understand where this question is coming from in terms of you don't want to just give a concise answer. But I think Bengu's absolutely spot on in what she said. I think you can give a concise answer for those people that just want something quick, and for search engines, LLMs that just want a quick factoid or a quick answer, but then expand on that further and give people more to sink their teeth into. I think that's definitely the right approach in this case.
Great. Simon, do you have any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, John O. Alderson did a post recently, maybe in his latest one, I can't remember, about how we should now be writing for not just humans, but also for computers, excuse me, for AI and chunking stuff up. And I'm not entirely sure I agree with that. And it comes down to this. If you're storytelling to your audience now, I think changing chunk to chunks, etc., to hit those LLMs now might be the wrong thing for the future when those LLMs get better, because they want them to be better to act more like humans, in which case you're going to have to revert everything back to storytelling again. So I think it's about your audience. I think it's who you're trying to get to. Okay, it might not be brilliant for search over the next 6 months, a year, but search is changing all the time. So keep to those basics.
Right, I've just noted that Monse said she hates the chunking term. We're basically having a hate, aren't we? Gurus, chunking, and so on. They're not allowed to use. Yeah, I think storytelling is so important for your brand, and please don't drop it purely. Drop the fluff, yes, but you can. I think that's your point of difference. And I think that point of difference really helps when it comes to things like SEO and you being picked versus the alternatives. I think it depends on the intent when somebody's searching for certain answers or queries or whatever. It depends if they want a quick answer versus Simon, you've mentioned quite a few times that if you want a recipe, when you're in the chat, if you want a recipe, you don't necessarily want to hear that it was something that the whole background to everything. But yeah, I think brand is incredibly important. I love working with brand teams on trying to make sure you make it obvious what content is about, but at the same time, your tone of voice is there. So yeah, please don't just drop branding for LLMs and chunk everything up, because that's what we think works. What do other people think, Simon? Anything in the chat?
Yeah, Motsi said, as long as the storytelling is supported by tech and is written in a way that both humans and AI understand. Pretty said, building on what Bengü said, I don't think storytelling is the villain here. Too right. And once you come back, I see you picked it out. She hates the chunking term, as we all do. Jordan has said, can you explore using TLDR section and then expand with your tone of voice? However, when it comes to storytelling, LMLs will adapt. I'm typing this as Simon said the same point. And I did. Yes, but he said that and he typed it, so I've read it. It's got too meta for myself now. And then Jordan's later said, protect the generational storyline at recipes at all costs, which maybe not. Mike.
I think also storytelling isn't just through words as well. You can also give people a feeling when they're on your website through things like images and design and video and all of those other things. There are other ways of bringing that content to life, and you don't just have to strip everything down and have very, very boring articles or landing pages. Okay, we're at that weird time where we've only got 10 minutes left, and we have a regular question. I'm going to try and fit one in, but I'm going to cut the question down on the fly if that's okay, which is basically somebody wants to know how much time and money we're all spending on learning. They're putting budgets together for next year, and they just want to know whether it's days of the week, whether it's time over the year. But Bengü, you're speaking at Search and Stuff in a couple of weeks' time. Do you go to other conferences? Do you spend much time just learning? What's your breakdown?
I try to keep it as 80-20. First, I prioritize proven tactics to bring results for the company or the client. But also we care the learning, experimentation stuff and testing and also conference stuff, because we do it for self-learning process. And then we apply what we learned. For example, when I try a new tool, I ask myself, will this tool save my time to make this process much more easier? Or if it generates leads for the company, which is the most important thing, I think. Also, for the conference stuff, I care about learning stuff from the event, and then bring them to the team, what I learned from there. And then we have that opportunity to apply some tactics, new trends, or to teach ourselves that we don't know before.
Great.
Yeah, so it's not sounding like a perk or a holiday or a price when you balance that stuff.
Yeah, the actual question, just picking up on what Bengu's saying there, is the actual question is somebody is basically asking if somebody goes off to a conference or they give somebody a day to do some learning a week, how do they know that's not just being treated as like extra holiday time or somebody just watching some more Modern Family or something like that? Geoff, what about you? How much time do you spend learning and how important is it?
I'm quite sad. At the weekends, I always listen to SEO podcasts, and walking the dog, I'm listening to SEO podcasts as well. So I spend quite a bit of my own free time looking into all this stuff. I would like to spend more time testing. I've started doing some testing in this sort of area, which is really helpful because at least then you have your own sort of proven results. And I think another really useful thing is to work out who else is doing testing, who are the trusted voices that actually show data that supports the claims that they're making about what does and doesn't work. I think that's really useful. And at the moment, I think AI search makes up, I'm talking about LLMs like ChatGPT, makes up about 5% of search thereabouts. So I wouldn't personally go all in on research and training for that small amount of the pie. I would gradually grow it and start off with small tests at the moment. At least that's my approach for the time being.
Great. Simon, what about you? How important is your 2026 learning budget?
I don't really have a learning budget as such. I do Brighton SEO every year and I go along to that. And I try and I try and go to sessions that I don't know enough about. So stuff that I don't know about, but also I go to sessions where I know everything. That's very boastful of me, but it's for confirmation that other people are doing things the same way as I'm doing them, that I've taught myself to do, etc. And go, thank God somebody else is doing it this way. I'm doing it right. So it's as far as daily training, I think if you're not learning stuff all the time, you're not doing SEO properly. You can't be a 9 to 5 manager. You've got to be understanding what's going on. Every website is different, as I always say, and you're always learning how people have done stuff and how they can do it better. And yeah, it's an ever-changing landscape. It always has been since the late 90s.
And something like Brighton SEO, I also try and go when I can, but I probably spend more time having lunch in the pub or something like that, chatting to people. And my version of learning is finding out what other people are doing. I do obviously go to as many of the talks as I can, but I take as much away from just chatting to people like yourself and finding out what you're up to. So does that count as learning, being in the pub? Because
Yes,
I can say I did
definitely.
that. Good. I would say I probably spend over half my time, I think, learning, not going to conferences, but just reading. Every time I'm doing something, I feel like you're learning stuff as you're going. Like Simon was saying, and I'm testing things and try and read as much as I can and try and listen to as many podcasts. I think it just makes you better at what you do. I guess a lot of the time it depends on what else is going on as well. If there's a big change, I want to find out as much as I can about what others' experiences are of that change, or if there's some new technology, I want to play with it. And but usually, even playing with something, I'm still thinking about my clients when I'm doing it. So it's all that time isn't necessarily something I can bill for, but it helps me create better strategies for them. I personally think that's really important. And if you're from this question, if you're the hiring manager or if you're trying to plan all this out, it is really important. I think you've just got to hold that person accountable. What changes have you made based on some of the things that are happening or this time that you spend learning? But it's so important for what we do, I think. You have to have time to test out new tools and all of that stuff. And sometimes you can waste an entire day going right down a rabbit hole. And that is also, unfortunately, part of the gig, but not, but sometimes you end up using that sort of years later. Simon, what are other people thinking?
I just want to add
Yes, go for
a
it.
very good tip that I learned years ago was for the person asking this question in the first place. If you're sending someone off to a conference, when they come back, get them to give a 20-minute presentation about what they learned at the conference. Do
Yeah.
tell them before they go, though, so they can make notes. But that way, they'll bring something back and then they can then spread it around the rest of the team, etc. In the chat, Jordan said that Reflect Digital, we're allocated half a day protected learning time each month, and we can always submit requests for paid personal and team training, which is very good. A lot of big companies do all sorts of training, which comes on to my next one I'm going to pull out. Was one of my favorite ever quotes that Mark has said. An employee once said, "What if I train my people and they leave?" And I say, "What if you don't train them and they stay?"
That's so good.
That it's one of my all-time favorite sayings. I used to have a poster on the wall saying that, and it's absolutely right. You need to train your people, and you need to trust them and let them go and do that. Mike, we've hardly got any time left.
That's very true. I used to have a boss actually years ago who, if I went off to conferences and I managed to go to Texas and places like that, so they spent quite a bit of money. So when they come back, when I used to come back, he'd say, "What difference is this going to make? What changes are we going to make?" And based on that, so very similar to the presentation I did, he'd ask what were like the 5 things we were going to implement. Okay, final question is our regular one, and that is, what are you most excited about in terms of SEO at the moment? Jeff, what are you most excited about?
For me personally, it's using LLMs and coding that they can provide to actually create tools that you can then implement onto a website. I find that's been really useful for questionnaires, more interactive things. I mean, I'm not a developer, I'm barely a technical SEO, but to be able to have that opportunity to do that and to make your user experience better through that, I found has been excellent. I'm really looking forward to expanding on that more, really.
Amazing. Bengü, what are you most excited about in terms of SEO at the moment?
Lately, I'm developing some tools to be useful for our company. So it's really exciting to see the whole team is into it and they are asking for more to learn about SEO process for them and what the tools are bringing to the value for both users and also for the company as revenue. I think they are wondering about it mostly. Also, the experimentations that I've been doing for a while by using various LLM tools. Yeah, because I think they are very useful when you use them responsibly, not for doing the work for you, but to using them to accelerate your ideas and outline the everything. Yeah, they are very exciting for me lately.
Amazing. Simon, what are you most excited about in terms of SEO at the moment? Has it changed in 2 weeks?
Yes, in true Joe style, events. Brighton SEO
Hey.
is coming up. Brighton SEO is coming up, and I'm getting a little bit excited about that now. And I'll see quite a few of you over that. And looking forward to lunch with Steve on the Thursday.
Amazing. I think we'll stop there. Thank you so much to everybody who has joined us live. Thank you to those of you that are watching afterwards on YouTube. Thank you to those who submitted the questions. Bengü, Geoff, thank you so much for joining us this week. It's been fascinating listening to you both. Simon, amazing. Thank you so much for co-hosting. I hope you'll be back lots doing this in the future. Thank you, everybody. Have an amazing weekend.
You and see you.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Simon.